Welcome to Restaurant Catering Smarts, your go-to podcast for restaurateurs looking to better operate and grow their catering profit centers. With every episode, you can count on expert advice, innovative strategies, and tasty tips straight from industry leaders. Our purpose is to help your business thrive. So, let's dig in to another juicy episode.
Hello again, I'm Michael Attias, your host of Restaurant Catering Smarts, and today's guest is Marianne Jeff, founder and CEO of the Women's Business Momentum Center. She's a consultant and coach for small businesses. She's been working with a longtime client of ours, Zach's Catering, and today we're going to discuss technology, systems, and habits. But before we get into asking Marianne a bunch of questions, let's take a minute to recognize our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Attias Catering Software, the industry leader in helping restaurants turn their catering chaos into calm. Discover why top independent and enterprise restaurants trust Attias to save them time and increase their catering sales. Go to www.catersn.com and sign up for a walkthrough of the software or free 30-day trial. Now let's dive into this episode of Restaurant Catering Smarts. Welcome, Marianne. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me here, Michael. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So glad you could be here. So, Marianne, one of the first questions I like to ask my guests is pick a number between 1 and 1,000.
497.
If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be and why?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I love questions. If I could change one thing about myself. You know, when I turned 40, I quit drinking. And I had been struggling. I mean, I started drinking when I was like 8 or 10 years old. I started bartending when I was 15 at a nightclub. And I lived in England. That's where this accent is from. And so it was more usual for younger people to be drinking. But it really shaped my life, and it was something I struggled with for so long. When I finally quit, right before I turned 40, so I'm like halfway through my 50s, so it's been over a decade.
You're like 15 years sober.
Yeah, so thank you. I think if I could change one thing, I think I have so much passion and commitment and creativity and determination that if I would have quit sooner, and trust me, Michael, I tried, but if I could change one thing, I would have quit, or maybe not even found the other road at the crossroads rather than that. And I think that would have been handling growing up and stress and adolescence differently so that I didn't pick up the glass.
So did you... Got it. I didn't know this was going to be like a 12-step meeting, but, you know, I'm seeing a lot of, I'm an EO, entrepreneurs organization, and there's a lot of people talking about sobriety in the business community, you know, where I think it's easy at the end of the day, you turn to a glass or a half a bottle or a full bottle or whatever to relieve the stress, and everybody has different, you know, did yours originate from fear of interacting with people? Did it deal with your household? Were you like pass out, blackout drunk, or was it a crutch?
Oh yeah. The tipping point when I actually did quit was that I'm very happily in a marriage, and my husband's amazing, and he never said you need to quit. He's very much been just, I have to come to my own conclusions about things. I used to smoke. He did the same thing with that, just let it be until I did quit. But with the drinking, it was when I started not remembering the conversations we'd had the night before. And so I would say things and then he'd go, yeah, I told you that. And I realized that I didn't remember things, I stopped talking to him. And when I realized that, that was kind of the tipping point. I think the reason I started it in the first point was to just deal with being an adolescent, to deal with, I had my own things, but everybody does at that age. And I also think it's a big part of the culture. So you talking about, I have a lot of my clients are in EO, and I totally relate to that idea of these entrepreneurs working hard and then needing some release. It's kind of built into the culture. Oh, I'm so busy. Let's go get a drink and unwind. So I think it's a habit, right? I'm all about having really great habits. This habit was something that obviously was a negative habit. But I think what it did for me was so much. I always make lemonade. So of all the years that I wanted to quit and everything that I went through, I'm able to see things differently now. I'm able to look and appreciate being conscious was the big thing for me. Being able to go out at night because I don't have to worry about drinking and driving, or being able to be fresh and up in the morning. I was always up, but I was always hungover. And so I've just got this new lease on life that I have that has been, I was already known as the person to go to get things done. That's why I'm the Get It Done Diva. Even when I was drinking, if you wanted something done, I was going to be the one to help you. But once I stopped drinking, it was on steroids. I was able to accomplish and focus so much more. That's when I started writing best-selling books and really grew my business exponentially. And so I think if I would have found a way to quit sooner, then it would have been nice to be able to create that momentum sooner in my life.
Did you go through a 12-step program? Did you go through rehab, or you go do it yourself, DIY?
I did everything. So yes to all of those things. And I do believe that with anything, I think a lot of times we're looking for what's the answer? What's the solution? And I don't think to anything at all, whether we're talking about quitting an addiction or anything, that there actually is one answer. And I think there's a challenge for people, because what happens is we do a lot of different things, in your business. As a restaurant owner, you do a lot of different things for your marketing. It's probably not one thing that's going to start making the business pick up, or it's not that one hit wonder kind of mentality of just suddenly everything's working because I did this one thing. So for me, over the years, I had a couple of years where I would not drink for 1 year. One of them, I was in a 12-step program, and I definitely think it's a really great resource. But when I did quit drinking, the reason that I was able to quit was because I sat down, and I love books. I love books, productivity books. We're not talking fiction, we're talking nonfiction. Right. And so what I did is I thought, my husband was going away for the weekend to his in-laws, and I looked him in the eye. We hadn't talked about it. And I looked at him and my daughter, who was really young at the time, just a couple of years old. And I said, I'm going to figure this out. And I didn't say what I was talking about. He just knew. We looked at each other in the eye, and he left. And I got I'm looking at them on the shelf here. I got all my productivity books out. I piled them on the floor. I had, 7 Habits and the 4 Agreements. I had every book. The pile was this high off the ground. And I thought to myself, I got a big whiteboard, and I thought, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out the answer, right? Going back to that idea of I just want the answer. And so I thought I'll pick up each book. I'll get the pith of it, the main point. I'll write them all on the board. And then I'll have my answer, and then I'll be able to fix this. I'll be able to figure this out. It's not the usual way about going about things to quit drinking, but I'd gone through every other approach. This is what I was going to do. And so I started doing it. I got the first book, and I thought, well, I'll read it and I'll write it. And then I realized how ridiculous it was. How long is that going to take me to do this? This is not an efficient way to do this. And the book I had was Gary Zukav, The Seed of the Soul, in my hand. And I looked down, and there was something about the table of contents that talked about living consciously. And suddenly what happened in that moment was I realized that I was excited about living consciously. So all the years of thinking I had to give something up, it was about giving up. It was about letting things go. You know, the celebrations and what my life would be like, because it changes your life dramatically, no matter what the habit is. I don't care if it's eating chocolate cake. You change something, it's going to change the people you're hanging out with, how you're living your life. And so when I had that moment and I realized I'm gaining something, not losing it, that was it. I never did anything else after that.
So it's really a mind shift.
It was a complete moment of shifting my mind in that second. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's
Thank
very
you.
cool.
Yeah.
You know, you were talking about looking at the book and, you know, all these different things that, you know, there's not one thing. One of my mentors, Dan Kennedy, tells a story about a chiropractor, and he's known for building $1 million practices, which was a thing back then. And so somebody says, what's the one thing you do to build $1 million practice? And he goes, I don't have one thing. I know 100 things to build a $10,000 practice. And when I was building my catering business, I felt like it was like one toothpick at a time trying to build that house, for sure. So let's talk about, we sort of got off on a crazy foot before we recorded this. I guess my team told me you were Zach's Catering, and that was sort of half correct. You're a consultant to Zach's Catering. So let's talk about your consulting practice and what you help with your clients with, and then let's talk about how you got involved with Zach and how you brought caterers in. So tell us about your consulting business.
Yeah. So Matt, who runs Zach's Catering, is a friend of mine. And I used to work at his restaurant, the restaurant that he managed, actually. And then he started his own restaurant. And I was helping with a catering department for another restaurant. And he kept saying, come work for me, come work for me, come work for me. And finally, after several years, I'm like, fine, I'll come work for you. And he wanted me to just do whatever I wanted because he saw what I was doing with the other restaurant, which basically was I designed a computer system. Back then I was using FileMaker Pro, and I created a database to organize the catering department because there wasn't anything like Caterzen around at that time. We're going back over 20 years.
Right.
Or I wasn't aware of it. And so I knew that systems and technology was an important piece of this. So I had built from scratch. And so I came over to him, built a custom FileMaker Pro for him with everything in it. Like, it helped with the directions. It was from the ground up. And it was probably not economical to build that for one client, right? As you can imagine. But
I know firsthand.
Yeah. But what it did is it gave the structure, the order that he needed, because he needed it to be a set way for the deliveries, because it was a little bit of a free-for-all when the drivers would need to take the orders and things were forgotten. The food was amazing, but things were not necessarily always going out the same way. And so he needed a consistency. And he needed systems. And so I set it up like the drivers came in. We had checklists that were built into FileMaker where you could check off that you have all the items. There were labels on things. The directions were clear. The way the staff were dressing. All the kind of systems that you need for a business. I loved the book, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And what he talks about there. Yeah. Is one of the number one reasons, and I know probably all of the listeners know this already, but we might as well say it, we need to be reminded, one of the number one reasons that small businesses fail is because they're too busy working in their business, not on it. And I think it's so true for restaurant owners because it's so easy. The phone rings or the kitchen needs you, or you need to run out and get some kind of produce or something. And so you're being pulled in a million directions. And so a piece of what I was doing with Zach's Catering as well was helping Matt to spend some time, to invest time in working on the business. So we created the system, a set way of doing things. Then it was a matter of him managing and making sure it was done that way, because it's all good and well to have a system, but if you don't have an owner or a manager going, okay, you're doing it, or letting people know if they don't do the checklist, that it's not okay, right? There needs to be a consistency. The other piece was the marketing. So I was helping him come up with email marketing campaigns, looking at doing social media, figuring out different strategies to bring in business, because if you're not doing that, then obviously you're not going to have any business to run. So there was at one point where I had an event and Matt was there, and it was a celebration. I think I'd been in business for 10 years at the time. I've been in business for over 20 years now. And he got the mic at this big dinner and he just welled up in tears. It was very moving. And I run the Women's Business Momentum Center, but, if there's a guy that's like, can guys join? Then that means, yes, you can join, right? You just have to be courageous enough to ask if you can be a part of my world here. And absolutely, men are welcome. So here he is, he grabs the mic and he said, I just want to say thank you to Marianne, because Marianne is everything. Everywhere I look in my business, everywhere I turn around, everything I look at, every system, everything, the computer, the marketing, everything, it's all because of her. So the systems really do touch so much of the business, and it's something that can easily be neglected because it's not important and urgent for business owners. So that's how I've been involved with.
Yeah, it's funny. You talk about the E-Myth. I read that before I got my first franchise. And I don't like to work. I really don't. My father worked his butt off for one vacation a year, worked, 5.5 days. And so for me, I've just enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wanted a business built on systems, and the E-Myth made sense to me. Mm-hmm. And so now I say I'd rather have a business built on processes, not personalities, because processes equal profits, personalities equal problems.
Yeah.
So often you have that one key employee. At Corky's, they had that one key employee, and she knew how to do everything, and she kept everything close to herself so nobody else could get in there. Well, you can't get rid of that person, right?
Yeah.
But with a good system, and it doesn't matter whether it's a spreadsheet, a checklist, whatever it is, well, if you've got it documented, then that person can get run over by a bus and somebody can come back in tomorrow and figure it out.
It's so true, Michael. I've had this conversation so often with business owners, especially when they're hiring people that are friends or relatives. They get very dependent on people, and it is about the person, not about the responsibility or the tasks that they're doing, which is dangerous ground, because then there's not a lot of boundaries. They feel like the restaurant owners I work with always seem to feel like they owe the employee, because there was never any boundaries about how much work they're doing and what they're doing, and it makes it very muddy waters. So I am much in agreement around that. And I think software and technology these days, we have so much amazing software that we can use as small business owners that allows us to really compete with the bigger businesses, which we didn't have before. And I think almost we're at an advantage as small business owners, because we don't have to go through a board of directors a lot of times to approve different things. So we can act on it quickly.
5 minutes, yeah. And what's interesting? I've always embraced technology, but I've always tried to be ahead of the curve. So to give you an example, do you know what a Palm Pilot is?
Yes, I had one of those.
Yeah, so I had a Palm Pilot, and it had a spreadsheet function in it.
Yeah.
And we built our own spreadsheet system for taking inventory every week and doing the food costing. And so we had a theoretical food cost every week to know if we were in line. And literally we'd go around the restaurant with the Palm Pilot, have the freezer and all that, upload the spreadsheet. And so back then in 1993, 94, 92, that was cutting edge for a restaurant to be able to do that. Now, the stuff that's out there is amazing, but I see the biggest issue is getting overwhelmed and really understanding what is it you're trying to solve.
Yes.
And what makes the most sense for you.
And I think, if I think it's great to have an example. I met doesn't mind me talking about him. So, but it was difficult to get Matt off of FileMaker. We were 18 years in that program, and it was gonna sink. It was gonna crash any minute and be a huge problem. And I could see this coming years before that. I knew that there was much better solutions in the cloud. You didn't want to have it dependent on one computer. And so it took a long time for me to convince Matt that we needed an online ordering system. Now, I think there's a lot of restaurant owners or small businesses that are starting to sell food now that are embracing technology quicker. I think that some of the businesses that have been in business for a while have a harder time because the younger people coming into business are more used to using technology.
For sure.
And so they learn things quicker. A lot of things look and feel the same way once you get into them, and they're not as intimidated. But some of the businesses that have been around for a while, like Matt's, he really just wanted to stick with what he knew, even though it was clunky and it was going to break any minute. So it took me probably 3 years or more after I found K2Zen. We looked at a bunch of different solutions. And then we found K2Zen, and I was like, this is the one. And it was like, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So I got him to the point where we decided which one. We had taken our time with it. And then COVID hit, and it would have been the perfect time to be on it, but he was not on it during that time. And so he was chained. You know, when you don't have an online ordering system, you know, a lot of your listeners probably, maybe they're using other things, maybe they're using K2Zen. It's a no-brainer. It's just the way you do it. But he was very resistant, and so he was chained to the phone, had to answer the phone all the time, and missing out on business, and really talk about, you know, not having any quality of life or not enjoying the journey. It was really difficult. Couldn't go away, couldn't do things. And so we got through COVID, and then I reintroduced the idea again. I said, look, you know, let's look at them again. And I had honestly forgotten that we had come to K2Zen. And we went through all the options again. So we were very thorough before we actually got involved. And then he finally was like, the second time around, he's like, okay, let's do it. It's do or die. His restaurant was suffering after COVID, and something had to change, and he was all in. And it is, you know, it's a process to set up technology. And I think whether it's an online ordering system like K2Zen, which is so much more than just online ordering, or if you're using any technology, I think the thing is for small businesses to invest time in learning and growing, to realize, I think a lot of my clients who get frustrated with technology, it's because they wait until something is urgent that they need the technology to do, and then they're figuring out on the fly, and it's urgent and hurried and it's stressful. But if you set aside time each day to watch a video, learn a little bit of something about something, then when you need to use it, you're not so stressed out, and you're going to retain the information better and be able to implement and figure things out much better. So I got him. It did take us a while to get things up and running. He thanks me every day now, because every time I talk to him.
We thank you too.
He's like, oh my goodness. When we got the first order that came through, I mean, we were texting each other, and it was a big order. It wasn't a little few, you know, $20 order. I think it was a couple of $1,000, this order that came through. Yeah, it was fantastic. We were jumping up and down and cheering, and it changed everything. But it's just one piece of it. You know, there's the email marketing, which is built in, the reminders. And for me, it's all about habits, whether it's setting up a new system like K2Zen and having the habit of every day we're going to spend a little time on it. Today we're going to upload all the pictures for all the salads, right? It's chunking stuff down. And then the next day, maybe we're going to put in all the descriptions for the salads, right? Because when you're just like, I'm going to get the whole menu up as quickly as possible, It's overwhelming.
So what do you think small business people in particular have a hard time having consistent habits. You know, whether it's sending out that one email a month to your list to promote catering, or, you know, just using the systems consistently, right? You know, in our own business, you know, my team would tell you, you know, I'd go to a seminar, I'd come back with a new hot topic and we would do it, and then we'd go and we'd do something else.
Yeah.
When we discovered EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, Traction, we've been using that for 7 years consistently, and it's made a difference having a system to operate your business. Why do you think small businesses have such a hard time keeping to those habits?
I think it really boils down to the basic habits of daily planning, weekly planning, 90-day planning. And I think a lot of times they're so busy working in their business, whatever fire they're putting out, that they're not thinking, you know, they might set some goals at the beginning of the year, but then to break it down into 90-day goals. But ultimately, it's the small basic habits of, you know, the reason a lot of small businesses start is because they want the freedom of time. But then they create this prison for themselves. And what I tend to do with my members and my clients is, one of the things we do is like, okay, what time do you start work? When's your prime time? Those 4 hours where you're at your best. What are you doing? And we had it with Matt. I had it down, I like to say, to the gnat's ass, where we had it down that he would get there, and before he got sucked into everything, he would take a walk around. He would call it walkabout, where he'd just walk around the restaurant to preempt anybody coming to him and distracting him, which ultimately would end up only taking a few minutes most of the time. Then he would sit down and check his inbox. And then he would have a power hour of working on a particular project based on his weekly goals, his 90-day plan.
Yeah.
So it's chunked down, but then having those daily habits, even in the afternoon, maybe having, or the evening, having like a little learn and grow time where, you know, I'm going to spend 15 minutes or 20 minutes just looking at learning a little bit more about some kind of technology. And then maybe another block each day of 15 minutes of creating a little bit of content. Because I think a lot of business owners, one of the things they need to be doing consistently is creating content, whether it's descriptions for the menu, whether it's social media posts, whether it's email marketing or something for the website. It seems like it is one of the hats that's really important for business owners. So I think the habit of planning your day, I mean, the book I wrote last year is called Daily Momentum, because I think this is so important. Even if you aren't up for creating a 90-day plan or annual goals, own your day. If you can own your day, you've got a fighting chance.
Do you have a copy of the book you can flash?
I sure do, right here.
Awesome. Beautiful.
It's #1 bestseller on Amazon. You know, I have people that have read this book and sent me pictures of it. Like, they're like, this is my Bible. Because if you can own your day, it makes such a difference.
Do you coach him? Are you like his coach currently? And I think for a lot of people, a coach is a good idea.
Yeah.
And I've worked with coaches when I went through post-divorce, and I just sort of like, I was sort of flailing in the wind. I said, okay, I'm going to hire a coach to keep me focused. And after about a year, I gave that up. And I think my #1 job is to just be a visionary. So I don't really have a day. I mean, I do have things that I get done, but I try not to have a day where I'm working in the business per se, because I learned a long time ago, most people just buy themselves jobs.
Yeah.
And the boss sucks. So
yeah.
There are times I have to get more involved to get the right people in the right seats and get systems set up. But at the end of the day, I just want to be the visionary and say, hey, this is where we're headed, and let's figure out how to get there together, because my team is better than I am.
Yeah.
I really have assembled.
You have. Your team, working with your team has been a delight. They're just so lovely and patient. You do have a great team, Michael. Yeah.
And I think that's the key, is surround yourself with really good people. And I have done a really good job of finding people. This is a challenge in software, and I tell people this in businesses: recruit people from other industries where what you're offering is a step up from what they have. And so let me explain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I just recruited people from the software industry, I would overpay, and I'd have people who are too entitled, and they leave me every 6 months because somebody could pay them more. You know, they could go to Google or Microsoft or Oracle or wherever, right? You know, Jillian came from retail store management, right?
I love
She's
Jillian.
Assistant. Yeah, everybody loves Jillian. She's a assistant store manager at Coach Outlet. She had a college degree. She just never found a career to take advantage of that. So I brought her in. No nights, no weekends, no holidays, you know, upward potential, you know, great quality of life. You know, her COO worked in the catering industry. She wasn't a COO. I saw her potential. The guy who does our product and project management, he was our digital marketing guy, and he over-engineered everything. And I go, you're perfect for speccing out projects, because when you're dealing with part of your team being in offshore development, you have to really break it down into like the Attias, as you would call it, little sections. And so I found his superpower. So once you find these people, you just let them do what they do best and get out of their way. In fact, you know, I'm probably the one who knows the least about anything, and I've probably learned that from my dad. You know, one day he says, I want you to cut the grass, and I cut it crooked. He goes, no, get out of the way, I'm going to do it. So I learned you're best off being the worst at something. Somebody else will come in and do it.
I didn't know you could cut grass crooked.
I could. Go like this or like that. I don't know.
I got it. Okay.
You go in and you help your clients systematize their businesses. I'm assuming we talked in the pre-interview about, you know, you help with marketing. What type of marketing initiatives have you helped Zach with?
You know, for a lot of small businesses, they tend to feel like they need to be doing social media and the email marketing, and I'm a fan of those things. But I think for smaller local businesses, one of the first things that they miss out on is really nurturing local connections. So, you know, Zach's food speaks for itself. It's so good. His 3-cheese lasagna is delicious.
Give everyone his website, because I went at the website and looked at the pictures, and the food looks like amazing.
Zach'sCatering.com. It's so good if you're in the LA area. They deliver miles. I mean, it's crazy, like over 50, sometimes 100 miles away. Wow. Because people love the food. They'll deliver all the way from LA to down where I am in Palm Springs. And his food really does speak for itself. So just leveraging for him a campaign where we had a script, and that the drivers, when they were dropping off food, were just dropping off a few cards and saying something to other businesses. A lot of it was buildings where there was definitely potential business right there where they were anyway. So I think a lot of times you can leverage what you're already doing. You just need to systematize it. You need everybody to be able to speak clearly what the business is. They need the tools. They need the little postcard or the business card. You know, we did the email marketing as well to nurture people. I'm not knocking that, but I think a lot of times it's the guerrilla marketing, right? Where you're just on the ground, one-on-one, picking up the phone and having him have a habit each day. And granted, yes, business owners can have somebody else do this. I'm not saying the actual owner or the CEO of the company has to do this, but to have somebody with a script that they're picking up the phone and they're reaching out. Thanks so much for your business. How did everything go? Or reaching out to people. Caterzen has built in that you can run a report if somebody hasn't ordered in X amount of months or they ordered this long ago. then you can pick up the phone, you can nurture these people and remind them who you are. That can make a big difference. So a big piece of what we were doing was that I wanted to leverage all of that before we even got into the social media and the marketing. That we never really did get to that point yet, to be honest. A lot of it was setting up systems with him and mindset. Because as business owners, when things aren't going well, it's not as easy. I just wrote an email and sent it out this morning about this. Like, mindset is everything. Whether you're the visionary or you're the roll your sleeves up kind of business owner, it doesn't matter. If you don't have the right mindset, then it affects everything. And if you can go into the kitchen and you can be in a good mindset, it's going to make an impact on the drivers that are going out and seeing the customers or the front of house people as well. So I think that's really key too.
Yeah, I think one of the best things that you could do, especially in the restaurant industry, because it's tough work, it's underappreciated, underpaid, is those little pats on the back, you know, on a summer day, go down and pick up some ice cream treats.
Yeah.
You know, we gave everybody a free meal on their shift. Other restaurants charge. It's like, what's it cost to give a little bit of food?
Yeah.
You know, when we used to do caterings out of town, I would take everybody and treat them out to a restaurant after our event. You know, just the little things make a big difference with people. It's the appreciation, because we can all go down the street and make another couple bucks an hour. I mean, everybody, there's hardly anybody who can't.
Yeah.
And it's like, you want to go where you feel appreciated and you enjoy the people you work with. And, you know, and we've all worked for assholes, and it's like nobody wants to stay there. And we've worked for people that are great, and we would follow them into battle, right?
I think another thing, Michael, too, that tends to happen from what I've seen with my clients who have restaurants is that I think, unlike any other business, it's like a family. And so that can be a positive dynamic, but it can also be a negative one where, once again, those boundaries about what's okay and how we're speaking to each other and the workplace environment, you've got to be mindful of that as well.
Right. Oh, without a doubt. You know, as we sort of close, I normally ask if somebody had to go start from scratch what they would do. But if you were starting with a new client, you know, most of our clients are in the catering space, specifically restaurants, they cater. What are the first three things you would help a client with, evaluate, implement? You know, what do you see as the first three most important? You're just going in day one.
So the first most important thing that I think anyone can ask themselves is what I do first with a client, and that is, what do you want? Do you want to be the visionary? Do you want to work just this many hours a week? It may feel like, you know, you don't have a choice, but you do. So getting really clear on what the restaurant owner wants, what kind of owner they want to be, would be the first thing. And I'm a big fan of putting things into a plan, because when I first started, I would work with other coaches, and what I found was that we'd have a lot of great conversations and nice ideas, but there was nothing to hold on to everything. So when I work with a client, we're going to put it into a plan. We're going to have that annual roadmap, and then we're going to create a 90-day plan of, like, what are the first things we're going to work on. And part of that is going to be about how you're running your day, so that we can look at how we can just allow you to enjoy the journey more. So I think the bigger plan, what do you want? Then really breaking it down to, where do you want to be 90 days from now? Creating a clear roadmap for that. And then really looking at how you're using the time you have and running your day so that you can enjoy the journey more.
Great. Okay. If somebody is interested in hiring you as a consultant, getting your book, how can they get hold of you?
They can go to the website, getitdonediva.com. So that's getitdonediva.com.
Awesome. You have been a wonderful guest.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing your sobriety journey. I can guarantee you there's a subset of the people listening that will get some value out of that. And I know that that's probably worth more than anything someone can do to build their business. So Thank you for sharing that and getting personal with us. So with that, I'm going to take us out.
Thanks so much, Michael.
You've been listening to Restaurant Catering Smarts. For more insights and episodes, make sure to follow along, subscribe, and share at caterzen.com.